It was the early morning of September 15, 2014, on the paradise island of Koh Tao in Thailand. As the first sun swept across the horizon, it shed a golden glow over the palm-fringed beaches. The gentle lapping of the tide against the shore blended with the noise of coconut trees swaying in the breeze. There was a lingering mist in the air from the previous night's coolness, which was slowly giving way to the tropical heat of the day. The atmosphere was serene, quiet, precisely what visitors had come looking for. Seri Beach, the island's most visited beach, was already stirring. Tourists sat on beach chairs, some finishing early morning runs, others sipping fruit smoothies and tropical cocktails. Backpackers were taking selfies, and couples strolled barefoot along the edge of the water, their footprints in the damp sand rinsing away briefly. The cafes and dive shops were filled with early customers planning their next trip. There was a sense of relaxation in the air, a casual vibe that lent this location a sense of peacefulness. And yet something was amiss. There had been a subtle shift in mood, a ripple across the otherwise calm surface of the day. A group of Thai police officers, their own faces serious and their movements slow and purposeful, worked their way along the beach. Unlike the bathing-suited, flip-flop-wearing tourists, these men were attired in crisp uniform and latex gloves. They were not on the beach to sun themselves or the sea. There was a murmur among beachgoers. Children were taken away. Talk died. Tourists were in suspended animation, refusing to believe news that 2 bodies had been found near the rocks at the edge of the beach. The area was in chaos, bystanders wandering too near, nosy eyes attempting to look over shoulders, camera phones raised. Some had unknowingly stood on evidence. The crime scene, once peaceful and secluded, was already tainted, its integrity breached long before investigators could get there to secure it. No longer was this a picture-perfect beach. It was now the site of a grisly double murder. And although the sun still rose and shone down on the island, the shadow of what had occurred there would leave a far longer shadow. The victims at the heart of this harrowing tale were 2 young tourists, both with bright futures and adventurous spirits that had taken them thousands of miles from home. Hannah Witheridge, 23, was from the quiet coastal town of Hemsby in Norfolk, England. She was described to her friends as warm, intelligent, and full of life. Her smile was capable of illuminating a room, and she had a magnetic presence that made others feel instantly at ease. Hannah had recently graduated with a bachelor's degree in education from the University of East Anglia and had started postgraduate studies in speech and language therapy at the University of Essex. Her goal was selfless. She wanted to use her skills to help children, particularly those with speech and communication problems. Friends and relatives recalled how dedicated she was to helping others, how her patience and compassion made her special. But before plunging headfirst into her chosen calling, Hannah wanted to take some time off to travel and relax. On August 25, 2014, she boarded a flight to Thailand with 3 friends, eager to explore Southeast Asia's rich culture, cuisine, and coastline. It was meant to be a rejuvenating vacation, a break from the stresses of university and a final fling before adulthood began in earnest. The girls island hopped together across Thailand's famed islands, documenting their journey through photographs of sun, smiles, and promise. Koh Tao was among their last planned stops. David Miller, though, was 24. He was from the island of Jersey, located in the English Channel. He was the second son in a close-knit family and had a lifelong interest in the outdoors and engineering. A kind, adventurous, and inquisitive individual, David had a love for life that was infectious. He had recently completed an engineering internship in Australia, during which he had acquired sound practical experience in the mining sector. On his way back to the UK, he wished to break up the long journey with a short holiday in Thailand with friends. Like most young travelers, David was drawn in by the promise of white sand beaches, turquoise oceans, and a change of routine. Koh Tao, with its party and diving reputation, seemed like the perfect rest stop before heading home. For David, the trip was part relaxation, part reflection, a breather to think about where he'd been and where his next destination would be. The men did not know one another beforehand and were united by circumstance after arriving on the island. They met while staying at the Ocean View Bungalows, a low-budget beachfront resort popular with backpackers. Some accounts suggest they chatted briefly, though others believe that their first bonding experience was the night before the murders, in a local bar amidst other travelers and electronic music. In any event, what is known is that their lives intersected briefly and horribly. Koh Tao, translated as Turtle Island for the sea turtles that lay eggs on its beaches, was a tourist paradise for those seeking beauty and adventure. Just 8 square miles in size, it was home to some 8,000 individuals, a combination of native Thai citizens and a growing number of immigrants, many of them from Myanmar. The majority of these Burmese workers had traveled to work in tourism or construction, bribing corrupt officials just to remain on the island. They were kept in close quarters, worked very long hours, and were all but invisible to the tourists who came and went. Despite simmering tensions over immigration and work, Koh Tao was known for being laid back and peaceful. Violent crime was unheard of, so rare in fact that there had not been a reported murder in 8 years. Tourists felt safe to walk alone at night, and the island's police force had more experience dealing with drunk and disorderly conduct than murders. Until it was all upset overnight. The savage murders of Hannah Witheridge and David Miller shattered the illusion of safety, revealing a seedy underbelly beneath the island's idyllic surface. The paradise that would soon become the center of an international scandal and a highly controversial investigation. It was the evening of September 14, 2014, and the tropical island of Koh Tao was alive with the energy of nightlife. Hannah Witheridge and her friends decided to spend their night at AC Bar, one of the island's most well-known beach clubs, which was renowned for neon lights, pounding music, and a rowdy clientele made up mostly of foreign backpackers. The bar was situated right on the beach, with partygoers dancing barefoot in the sand, drinks in hand under rows of multicolored lanterns. Sometime during the night, Hannah met David Miller. Some reports suggest they may have already met casually at Ocean View bungalows where both of them were staying, although others state their first meeting was at the bar. Whatever the case, by the end of the night, the pair appeared to be getting on well. They were laughing, talking, and dancing, two strangers from different parts of the world united by the magic of a shared travel experience. Around 1 a.m., security footage caught Hannah and David exiting the AC Bar, disappearing into the darkness of the island's trails. Neither was struggling. They seemed calm, possibly even joyful, as they strolled away from the music and the partygoers. What happened in the next few hours is anybody's guess, a secret that would terrorize the island and send shockwaves around the globe's headlines. Sometime between 4 o'clock and 5 a.m., a Burmese migrant worker working early morning cleaning duty made a grisly discovery near the southern end of Seri Beach. Two bodies, mere meters from each other, David's half in the surf, Hannah's on the sand, her clothing disturbed, were the appalling discovery. A short distance away was a small pile of personal belongings, which were quickly identified as theirs. The bodies were discovered gruesomely close to their accommodation, a scant 30 meters from Ocean View bungalows. It was a macabre contrast, the scene of senseless violence just a few feet away from where they had laid their heads just hours earlier. Panic set in among the local workers immediately. Some locals moved the bodies for fear that the incoming tide would obliterate evidence before police could arrive at the location. Their activities, though possibly well-intentioned, tainted a crime scene that was already under threat of contamination. More troubling yet, authorities didn't arrive to initiate a formal investigation until nearly 11 a.m., over 5 hours after the body was initially found. By then, much of the area had been disturbed, and valuable evidence might already have been lost. When investigators arrived at last, they began to comb the beach for evidence. The area was in disarray, with curious onlookers still present, and little had been done to protect potential forensic evidence. Despite these drawbacks, a number of significant pieces of physical evidence were found near the bodies. Close to Hannah, the police recovered several cigarette butts, a spent birth control blister pack, a wooden stick, and a garden hoe as two potential murder weapons, both of which were stained with blood. These were collected and taken for forensic analysis. The hoe was particularly believed to have been used in inflicting fatal head wounds. A later autopsy confirmed that David had received multiple blows to the head, most likely with a blunt instrument, before drowning in the shallow water. The presence of water in his lungs indicated he was still alive when submerged. Hannah's autopsy also revealed that she had suffered horrific injuries to the head. There were also signs of sexual assault, making her death even more horrific and highly distressing. Although DNA samples were taken from the bodies of the victims, a basic error was committed. Investigators failed to properly test or preserve the victims' clothing, which might have included valuable forensic evidence such as DNA from the perpetrators. This error would be one of several serious flaws in the investigation that would later be strongly criticized both locally and abroad. The local reaction was a wake-up call to the island's unpreparedness to carry out a serious criminal investigation. The extremely small Koh Tao police force comprised just 6 officers who were responsible for responding to emergencies on the entire island. The inexperience, limited resources, and the absence of a set procedure for investigating a murder were immediately apparent. The crime scene was never properly sealed off. Tourists still walked along the beach, some even into the area where blood could still be visible. Reporters arrived before forensic specialists. Photos of the bodies of the victims, taken before police were able to cover them up, were leaked onto the internet, a grisly invasion of privacy that angered people in the UK and contributed to pressure on Thai authorities to act quickly. Public confidence in the investigation began to collapse almost from the outset. Rather than following a cautious, unbiased investigation, police appeared determined to uphold the island's reputation as a tourist haven. They eliminated the possibility that islanders could be implicated, with one spokesman going so far as to say on record that no Thai person could have committed such a crime. Not only did this alienate outsiders, but it also conveyed a very clear message that foreigners, particularly illegal immigrants, would be targeted as suspects. One of the initial theories offered by the police centered on jealousy. David's British roommate was first suspected on the assumption that he had attacked David in a rage over Hannah. But this theory quickly collapsed after investigation was made without physical evidence. There was no evidence to support it, and the roommate's alibi was solid. As the pressure mounted to make an arrest, the police targeted the island's sizable community of illegal Burmese migrant workers. The workers, who were already living in hiding with limited legal rights, were tempting targets. Nearly 200 people, mostly Burmese men, were made to take DNA tests. The method was confrontational and, in the opinion of many, inherently defective. Rather than uncovering the truth, the inquiry began to feel like a performance, an act aimed at shutting the case quickly rather than fully. The barbaric killings of the two young Western tourists horrified Thailand and many more beyond its borders. Koh Tao's image as a peaceful and safe island paradise was shattered overnight. As international media spoke of a backpacker murder mystery, Thailand's tourism sector, one of its most significant economic drivers, was thrown into crisis. Lest the nation's reputation be irreparably damaged, the Thai authorities were under immense pressure to deliver swift justice. Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, newly installed after a military coup earlier that year, took a personal interest in the case. Determined to reassure foreign governments and salvage tourist confidence, he reportedly called the national police chief every day, demanding regular updates on the investigation's progress. Meanwhile, local detectives combed through surveillance footage, but much of the island's CCTV infrastructure was poorly maintained. Some of the cameras were not functional or were pointing away from significant locations. Of those that did, one recording was relevant. It showed three young men, Ma Mao, Za Lin and Wai Phio, buying cigarettes and alcohol from a 7-Eleven close by around the time the murders took place. Soon after, the three were spotted walking towards the beach. All three were illegal Burmese migrants working on the island, a group that often lived on the outskirts of society and was an convenient target for suspicion. Interest then focused on Ma Mao. Questioned, he replied that he had left the group that night and gone somewhere else. He insisted that when he returned the next morning, Za Lin and Wai Phio were asleep. Still, the three men were detained. Za Lin and Wai Phio, although they held valid work permits, were treated more like immigration offenders than suspects or witnesses. Za Lin and Wai Phio were officially arrested by police on October 2, 2014. They were quickly pinpointed as the two main suspects. What followed was a very troubling interrogation process. The suspects were questioned without official legal counsel or professional interpreters. Police relied on anyone who spoke Burmese, including street vendors and fellow migrants, to translate, a practice that raised critical objections about fairness and accuracy. Following hours of intense interrogation, Za Lin and Wai Phio broke. The young men told police they had seen David and Hannah kissing on the beach and had then attacked them on impulse, police said. Police said DNA evidence tied them to the crime. Samples allegedly matched DNA on Hannah's body and the cigarette butts at the crime scene. Also, one of David's missing phones was found in Za Lin's home, it was claimed. In a publicity stunt that was widely criticized as degrading and melodramatic, the police staged a public reenactment of the murders. The two men were taken through the crime scene before a crowd of journalists and spectators and forced to go through the details of their purported crimes. Within days, it all began to unravel. A human rights lawyer from Myanmar visited the suspects in prison and was horrified by what he saw. Both men bore physical evidence of abuse, bruising, cuts, and swelling. When they spoke to him, Za Lin and Wai Phio retracted their confessions and told him that police beat, threatened, and tortured them into confessing. They said they were stripped naked, placed in cold cells, and beaten repeatedly. The message was straightforward: confess or be further abused. Word spread quickly, and Burmese migrant workers on Koh Tao stepped forward with the same stories. Several of those caught up in the mass DNA screenings complained they too had been beaten and harassed during questioning. A narrative emerged that Za Lin and Wai Phio had been framed, not because of overwhelming evidence, but because they were weak, poor, and convenient targets. The international response was swift and severe. Human rights organizations condemned the use of forced confessions and the lack of due process. The media across the world questioned the integrity of the investigation, with many speculating that the Thai police had orchestrated a cover-up to protect the island's reputation and appease foreign governments. Despite the increasing criticism, Thai police maintained that their investigation was complete and unbiased. The National Human Rights Commission of Thailand launched a formal inquiry into the allegations of torture and abuse. Police officials, however, repeatedly refused to appear. Before hearings that had been scheduled, which helped fuel suspicions of wrongdoing and possible cover-up. The defendants' lawyers traveled from Bangkok. They requested additional time to review the evidence, like the 900-page police report, but were denied. In a shocking twist, the defense was not even given the full report until the trial was already underway. In December 2014, Za Lin and Wai Phio were charged with 5 offenses: premeditated murder, conspiracy to murder, sexual assault, illegal entry and illegal residence. Wai Phio was additionally charged with theft of David's phone, though it was found on Za Lin, raising suspicions of evidence planting. The trial began on July 8, 2015, and lasted for 18 days. Judges barred taking notes in court. The prosecution depended heavily on the immigration status of the suspects and the DNA evidence. They alleged that the men targeted David first, drowning him before turning on Hannah and killing her with the same weapons. The defense argued that the entire case was based on a contaminated and biased investigation. They referred to the contamination of the crime scene, DNA collection irregularities, and coerced confessions. They argued that Za Lin and Wai Phio were innocent and had simply gone swimming, to come back and find their clothes missing. They subsequently found David's phone left on the beach and took it, not knowing its significance. In 2015, during the trial, the court accepted a defense motion to reanalyze the forensic evidence. Independent forensic experts, among them Thailand's best-known forensic pathologist, Dr. Pornthip Rojanasunand, were invited to validate the original DNA findings. The results were unsettling. No DNA match on the hoe. The garden hoe that was suspected to be the murder weapon did not have any DNA from Za Lin or Wai Phio. This was very doubtful because if the suspects had used it to bludgeon the victims, then their DNA would have been present. Contaminated or poorly preserved samples. Dr. Pornthip and other specialists confirmed that the evidence had not been handled properly. The samples were degraded, poorly stored, and were not documented properly, so it was difficult to verify the original results. Lack of transparency. The defense was never given full access to the forensic data, only summaries. This kept independent experts from being able to verify the integrity of the DNA match that police had claimed. Despite these concerns, the court affirmed the original DNA results and declared them valid. In December 2015, Za Lin and Wai Phio were both found guilty and sentenced to death, a decision that sparked international outrage and reopened claims that the case had been mishandled from the start. Despite serious concerns about coerced confessions and questionable DNA evidence, Thailand's Supreme Court upheld the decision in 2019. However, in August 2020, the 2 men received royal clemency from King Maha Vajiralongkorn. Their death sentences were commuted to life imprisonment on the basis of good behavior and demonstration of remorse. While the pardon spared their lives, it did not overturn their convictions. To this day, Za Lin and Wai Phio remain incarcerated, continuing to protest their innocence. The truth of what happened on Koh Tao may never be revealed. What had started out as a dream holiday for Hannah Witheridge and David Miller ended in horror beyond anything they could have imagined. Their killings didn't just devastate 2 families, they shook Thailand's reputation as a safe, idyllic paradise. The case exposed deep flaws in the country's justice system: botched investigations, coerced confessions, and exploitation of vulnerable migrant workers. With doubts about Za Lin and Wai Phio's guilt continuing to swirl, one question remains: were they truly guilty, or simply convenient scapegoats? Years later, the truth remains cloudy. But one thing is clear: on that September night, Koh Tao lost its innocence, and its reputation would never be the same. Thank you for watching. Every victim deserves their story told. If you found this story shocking and heartbreaking, subscribe to Crime Uncovered and help keep their memory alive. What do you think about Hannah and David's murder? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, keep questioning everything.